I recently finished a book that has left me more confused than any other book has ever left me. I'm not confused because the plot was too epic or too grand and it was too hard to follow. And I'm also not confused because there was too many characters and I couldn't keep them straight, or I couldn't keep their allegiances straight. What's left me confused is what I even think about this book. Part of me thinks it might be one of the great American novels of the 20th century. Another part of me thinks it might be one of the most overhyped books for a genre, and one that I don't understand why people make it out to be such an epic piece. So stick with me as I tell you about my reading experience with American Tabloid by James Ellroy, and why I think it is a book everybody should read, and also a book that is probably gonna leave you a little underwhelmed. American Tabloid is the story of three men who work for the FBI, the CIA, the mob, and the president in various roles, and their efforts to shape American history in the late 50s and early 60s. And within this, we follow three main characters. There's Pete Bondurant, kind of the mob hitman. There's Kemper Boyd, who works for the FBI, the CIA, John F. Kennedy, and he's out for his own. And there's Ward Little, a former FBI agent who comes and goes with the FBI depending on how well he's performing at his job. And it's about these three men and their attempts to shape American history and to make as much money as they can for themselves, and everybody else be damned. This is historical fiction in the sense that we follow Kennedy from being a senator, running for president, and essentially getting the job, and the book ends with his assassination. I'm not spoiling anything. This is all laid out literally in the opening paragraph of the book that James Ellroy writes before we even get into the story. It's hard to be concise about a book like American Tabloid. It is a very sprawling book, and at the heart of it, it is those three characters, but there's many, many other side characters that you will recognize from history. There's the President John F. Kennedy, there's his brother Robert Kennedy, there is Jimmy Hoffa, there is Howard Hughes, there's just a lot of side characters in this book, all telling the history of America in the late 50s and early 60s. Some of that works to American Tabloid's detriment. It's hard to believe that three men could shape so much of American history, especially three men who have relatively small roles within the American government and the American government forces. So having them be a part of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and be part of the assassination attempt on John F. Kennedy, and be part of the attempts at shutting down the mob, all from these three men, that's where some of it feels like the great American novel, and again, where some of it just feels so overblown, especially in 2025. So, what I mean by that is I don't know if there is another book that really encapsulates America and what America stands for than American Tabloid. The opening line of this book is, "He always shoots up by the TV light." It blows me away. Like, there's nothing more America than drugs and TV, especially in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. You know, that is just the quintessential American things. You know, we are still, to this day, raptured by the war on drugs, and we're still enraptured by what's on television and what influencers are doing. But it's also, reading this in 2025, where this book falls flat. Because in 2025, smearing the Kennedy name isn't anything new. I mean, I grew up my entire life knowing that Kennedy was a bit of a sex hound. That's not any breaking news here, despite how much this book tries to tell you that it is. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure in 1995, when this book was published, that was perhaps some pretty cutting edge stuff, and kind of besmirching that Kennedy name was a bit taboo. But 2025, I don't know if the Kennedy name can get much lower, and none of that was shocking to me, despite how much Ellroy beats you over the head with it. I mean, Kennedy is often referred to as Bad Back Jack because he throws his back out while having sex with a hooker. And that is how everybody refers to him in this book. But at the same time, the grandiosity and the scope of American Tabloid is the most American thing I can think of. I mean, this book is obsessed with violence. This book is obsessed with sex. This book is obsessed with money and power. None of that's changed in American history from then to now. Those are all the same things that we're still obsessed with in American culture. And that's where I really why I'm so confused about this. Because this is so much of American culture thrown into one book and dialed up to 11. And that's why I think it partly is the great American novel, because nothing encapsulates America and Americans' history like this. But at the same time, it is so overdone. It is everything turned up to 11. It is violence cranked up to 11. It's drugs cranked up to 11. It's war on drugs cranked up to 11. Sex cranked up to 11. And when he never takes his foot off the pedal, the reader doesn't have a chance to even appreciate what's going on. And I know that's exactly what Ellroy is trying to do here. His prose is leading you to this. His prose is stripped of any excess word. I have never, ever read prose like Ellroy. And I know that I've talked about how Jordan Harper has that short, clipped prose. James Ellroy is the king of that. He has stripped every extra word out of his sentences. Sometimes they almost read like you're reading a telegraph. Every extra word is removed and you're just getting point across. Speaking of telegraphs, a lot of this book is written from the point of view of phone calls that have been wiretapped. They've been written through notes passed back and forth. They've been just conversations that are happening, and all of that's been transcribed, and that's sometimes how the plot moves along. It's an interesting take on the epistolatory novel, and at times it works really well, and at times it's used to move across vast swaths of time because he doesn't know what he wants to do in those time periods. There can be, 9 or 10 months that are wrapped up in 3 or 4 letters back and forth to people. However, James Ellroy has no issue spinning out on some convoluted plot that really isn't needed at that time, where you will spend 60 or 70 pages on a minor plot point that could really have been wrapped up in 1 or 2 chapters and moved along. So his use of playing with time is very bizarre in that way. One of the main reasons why I feel this book is overblown is that it was written in 1995 and it feels like it was written in 1995. And by that, I mean, it feels like it came straight out of Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Natural Born Killers, and I'm not meaning to name like all of these old Tarantino movies that he wrote or directed, but it really feels like a Tarantino movie at times because the machismo is dialed up so much. Every man is incredibly cool in his own head, and they are saying the greatest, coolest line. They are the greatest, toughest character. And man, oh man, do they hate minorities and do they hate gay people. And you better strap in because you are going to be beat over the head with some racism and some homophobia. And at the same time, you do have characters who are against those things. One of the main characters, Kemper Boyd, his job with the FBI is actually to help disenfranchised black voters in the South be able to get registered to vote and feel comfortable going to the voting booths without being attacked by white people. And he is very sympathetic. He does not use any derogatory terms. He is not using any racism at all. But it's getting beat over your head by every other character in this book, and it's just tiresome. You don't need to be like this edgy. Maybe in 1995, that's where society was. That was what was edgy. That's what was cutting edge. That's what pushed the envelope. Reading it in 2025 though, it's a lot. It is a lot. But then, I circle back. That's what America is. America is just this country that is just so hyped up on violence, so hyped up on being edgy and pushing in the envelope. And how far can we take something? And Ellroy nails that. Ellroy nails the feeling of America in this book. Unfortunately, he's not interested in any redeeming qualities of people in this book. This book is as dark as you can get. It is as violent as you can get. It is as noir as you can get noir to be. And it's really interesting to kind of dive into that world. I just wish that this book was 300 pages and not 575 pages. But that's kind of what I keep coming back to. This grandiose scale that Ellroy uses in this book. I don't know, reading this in 1995, what it would have been like. I can tell you what it was like in 2025. But part of me wonders, if I read this 30 years ago, would I be blown away by just how ruthless politicians were? How money hungry everybody in the federal government or around the government was? Would I be shocked and would I be surprised that some very big name people are being slandered in this book? Would I be shocked to find out all these seedy, underhanded dealings that are going on between America, between Cuba, because we do touch on the Cuban Missile Crisis in here, and between the mob, and all of these powerful people who got to the top by being ruthless and stepping on every single person they could. Perhaps in 1995, that was a pretty novel concept. I mean, this was one of, I think, Time magazine's best books of 1995. It did win awards. 2025, though, nothing is telling me is that shocking. And yeah, that's where it leaves me. Part of me buying into this grandiose scale of what Ellroy is telling me, showing me how dark, dirty, and corrupted America is, and how America always was this way. And that really makes me think, that's the great American novel, telling Americans' history. And part of me wondering, why do people make such a big deal about this book? The writing was great, but it wasn't like top tier, you're never going to read sentences like this again. And it is a historical fiction, you know the plot beats before you even pick up this book if you know anything at all about American history in the late 50s and early 60s. The characters, a lot of them were very one note. And what Ellroy is telling you isn't anything that you're gonna be shocked by. It's not anything that's gonna make you go, whoa, I never really thought about the world this way. At least not in 2025. And that's why I'm just left confused. What do I think about this book? I still don't know. I've been done this book for 2 weeks now. I still think about it often. I don't know what I actually think about it. Would I recommend it to somebody? Tentatively? I mean, you gotta be in the mood for this book. I will say that there is an introduction that Ellroy does that's about 2 paragraphs long. If you read that introduction and you're on board with that, that's the next 580 pages. If you read that introduction and you're like, nope, not for me, don't try it anymore, because that's literally what you're going to get. It's sex, it's drugs, it's corruption, it's violence, it's America. If you made it this far, please let me know in the comments what book has left you as confused as American Tabloid has left me. Please hit that like button, and if you want more content like this that covers crime, noir, or horror fiction, consider subscribing, and until next time, keep your porch light on.